Alone in a stormy night, Ethan thought the only sounds he'd hear were the rain and wind. But when soft footsteps echoed from the basement door, he realized something else was inside the house with him. The night had settled heavy over the small town, the sky swollen with dark, seething clouds. Rain hammered against the old wooden house, a place that seemed forgotten by time itself. Inside, the air was cold, carrying that damp scent of loneliness, a scent that clung to the faded curtains and scratched-up wooden floors. Dim blue light from the TV flickered across the living room, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move just out of sight. The only other source of light was a harsh, sterile beam from the kitchen, humming quietly, almost mockingly, in the silence. It was the kind of house that didn't just feel empty, it felt abandoned, even while someone still lived there. Sitting hunched on the couch was Ethan. Early 30s, messy hair, wearing an old hoodie, eyes glued to the screen of his gaming console, not because he was excited, but because it was better than hearing his own thoughts echo through the empty rooms. After his divorce, Ethan had grown used to the stillness, the way the house almost breathed when the winds picked up outside. He didn't mind the loneliness. Or at least, that's what he kept telling himself. But tonight, something else was breathing in that house too. The first real sign that something was wrong didn't come from inside the house, it came from the storm itself. A brutal gust of wind slammed against the living room window with a crack that made Ethan jump. The whole house shuddered, as if something massive had just pressed its weight against it. For a second, the TV flickered and the sterile kitchen light buzzed louder, then, silence. Blackout. Ethan sat there, frozen, the darkness swallowing him whole. The only sound now was the relentless drumming of rain on the roof, and the low groan of the house shifting under the assault of the wind. He fumbled for his phone, the cold blue glow feeling almost alive in his trembling hand. He stood up, his steps creaking on the old wood floors, and moved towards the window. Beyond the sheets of rain, the street was a blur, dark, shapeless. Were the neighbors' houses dark too? Hard to tell. Everything looked wrong. Empty. Like the world had been wiped clean while he wasn't looking. But deep inside, Ethan felt it. This wasn't just a storm. Something else had arrived with it. The storm outside raged on, howling like a wounded animal. Ethan, still clutching his phone, tried refreshing the outage map, nothing. No reports. No alerts. Just the endless spinning circle of no signal. Then, ping. A new message popped up from an unknown number. Due to fallen power lines, expect outages overnight. Stay indoors. No company logo. No caller ID. Just a cold, clinical message, as if someone out there knew exactly when to strike. Ethan frowned but shrugged it off. Around here, outages were nothing new. He set the phone down, trying to convince himself everything was fine. But it wasn't. Behind him, the house creaked again, slower this time. Almost rhythmic. Like footsteps. He turned quickly, shining his phone light across the living room. Nothing. Just the same familiar furniture, thrown into long, twisting shadows. He told himself it was the storm playing tricks on his ears. And yet, as he moved back to the couch, the basement door, the one that should have been shut tight, hung half open, swaying slightly in the draft. Something was waiting. And it wanted him to come looking. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to stay away from the basement, but logic kept him glued to the spot. Maybe a breaker tripped. Maybe that's all it was. Right? Before he could decide, his phone vibrated again, this time, a call. 911 dispatch. A voice, calm and professional. Relief flooded him. We received your distress signal. Officers are on the way. Ethan hadn't even made a call yet. His stomach twisted. Still, minutes later, flashing red and blue lights blurred through the rain outside. A sharp knock hit the front door. A tall man in a soaked police uniform stood on the porch, badge shining under the storm. Sir, we need to check your house for safety. Something was off. His voice was too flat. His smile, a little too wide. Ethan hesitated, heart thundering, but what could he do? refuse the police? He stepped aside. The man entered slowly, dripping water across the floor. His eyes darted around the house, not like a man checking for danger, but like a man memorizing an escape route. Ethan's gut twisted into knots. The real storm had just stepped through his front door. The officer moved deeper into the house, boots thudding heavier than necessary against the old wood. Ethan tried to steady his breathing, pretending not to notice how the man's hand hovered just a little too close to his belt, not near a gun, but near a long, black flashlight. Or maybe it wasn't a flashlight at all. "I'll just check the basement," the officer said casually, flashing that same too-perfect grin. Before Ethan could react, the man turned toward the basement door, the one Ethan knew had been opened earlier. Panic gnawed at him. His survival instincts finally kicked in. "No, wait," Ethan stammered, but it was too late. The cops slammed the door shut behind him, locking them both inside the house. In the flash of lightning through the windows, Ethan saw it clearly: the badge on the man's chest wasn't real. Just a cheap replica, glinting under the rain-soaked fabric. A muffled thud echoed from the basement, not a step this time, but something heavier. Something closer. The last thing Ethan heard before darkness swallowed him was the quiet click of the front door locking, from the inside. Deep in a forgotten forest, Henry and Liam thought they were alone. But when strange figures began to close in through the trees, their fight for survival became a desperate, blind race against an unseen terror. The dirt road ended miles ago, swallowed whole by the forest. A forgotten trail stretched ahead, barely visible under the thick blanket of dead leaves and gnarled roots. Henry and Liam moved side by side, their boots crunching softly against the earth. Thick, heavy air clung to them, smelling of wet bark and old, rotting wood. Henry, trying to mask his nerves, kept tossing out jokes and random comments about the adventure they were on. His laugh was quick, shaky, dying fast in the crushing silence of the woods. Beside him, Liam stayed quieter, scanning the tree line with sharp, cautious eyes. The deeper they went, the more the forest seemed to shift, the trees growing closer together, the trail narrowing, the light above thinning into a murky gray. After what felt like endless miles, they finally reached a small clearing atop a crooked hill. A patch of rough, dying grass. No other tents. No signs of life. No way to call for help if they needed it. Only the forest, silent, watching, waiting. They thought they were alone in the woods, but something else had already found them. As Henry struggled with setting up his tent, Liam wandered toward the edge of the clearing, drawn by the vast, endless stretch of forest beyond. From up on the hill, the view was breathtaking, but not in a way that felt comforting. It was too vast, too empty. The trees below seemed to move in the corner of his eye, shifting when he wasn't looking straight at them. That's when he saw it. A flicker of motion between the trees. Shapes, human shapes, slipping through the thick undergrowth far below. Liam squinted, catching only glimpses, 4, maybe 5 figures, dark and distant, threading their way through the forest like they belonged there. He called for Henry, waving him over, but by the time Henry joined him, the figures were already gone, swallowed up by the trees. "Probably just hikers," Henry said, too quickly, too loud. Liam nodded, but the pit in his stomach only deepened. They weren't as alone as they thought. And whoever else was out there, didn't want to be seen. Night fell fast, swallowing the clearing in a sea of black. The campfire cracked weakly between Henry and Liam, casting long, twitching shadows across the grass. They sat in nervous silence, each lost in his own thoughts, until the forest broke the quiet with something wrong. Voices. Faint, tangled voices, floating from deep within the trees. Not laughter, not conversation, something colder, more deliberate. They couldn't make out the words, or even if they were words at all. Just a low murmur, like the forest was speaking in a language meant for no one to hear. Then the voices stopped. A single set of footsteps crunched toward them through the dark. A man stepped into the flickering firelight, tall, wiry, with wavy black hair tucked under a dirty red baseball cap. His smile was too wide, too fixed, as if he'd been practicing it too long. "Either of you know where the trail is around here?" he asked casually. Henry pointed, mumbling an answer. But Liam, staring at the man's empty eyes, knew something was off. Very off. Sometimes, it's not the darkness you should fear, it's who comes out of it smiling. The man with the red cap disappeared into the woods, and with him, the fragile comfort they had left. Henry and Liam sat by the dying fire, both too shaken to speak. The forest felt heavier now, like it was holding its breath, waiting for them to move first. The wind had stilled. No insects chirped. No branches creaked. It was a silence so thick it rang in their ears, a living thing pressing against their skin. After what felt like an eternity, Henry broke the silence, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Should we just leave?" Liam didn't answer right away. Everything inside him screamed yes. He nodded, and they began packing with frantic, clumsy hands. Every snap of a buckle, every rustle of fabric sounded like an alarm bell in the dead night. Then, just as Liam swung his bag onto his shoulders, a single, unmistakable crunch of footsteps came from behind him. Without the fire, the darkness was total. He spun around, flashlight trembling in his grip. Nothing but black trees. And the heavy, invisible weight of something watching. By the time you realize you're being hunted, it's already too late. The flashlight clicked on, its beam slicing through the darkness, and there he was. The man with the red cap stood barely 15 feet away, frozen mid-step, staring straight at them. His face was empty, blank, except for that same unnatural, stretched-out smile. Liam's heart dropped. Without thinking, he killed the light, plunging them back into darkness, and bolted. Henry was right behind him, their footsteps pounding against the soft forest floor in chaotic rhythm. From behind them came more sounds, not just one set of feet, but many. Shapes crashing through the woods on either side of the trail, shadowy figures matching their speed, getting closer. Branches whipped at their faces, roots caught at their ankles, but fear kept them upright. The forest seemed endless, a twisting black maze with no escape. But then, through the trees, a glint of metal. The car. Home. They stumbled into the clearing, threw themselves into the vehicle, and peeled away into the night. They escaped the woods. But the question still clawed at their minds. Who else was out there, and what would have happened if they hadn't run? In a forgotten roadside hotel, a lone traveler seeks rest. But as the night deepens, strange knocks and a hidden figure lurking in the shadows turn his stay into a race against something he never saw coming. The old road stretched endlessly under a heavy gray sky, cracked and crumbling, swallowed by dry fields on both sides. No cars. No noise. Just the occasional moan of the wind through the skeletons of abandoned gas stations and boarded-up stores. The sun was slipping behind a wall of clouds, bleeding orange into the black horizon. At the wheel of a dusty sedan, a young man in his early 20s leaned forward, eyes tired but alert. His jacket was rumpled from hours on the road, a half-empty coffee cup rattling in the cup holder. College break was supposed to be a happy trip home, but right now, it felt like he was driving deeper into a forgotten world. The car's headlights finally caught a crooked motel sign swinging in the breeze. The building behind it was squat, old, and sagging under the weight of time. A single dim light flickered in the lobby window. Inside that motel, behind peeling walls and silent hallways, something else waited. Not a ghost. Not a creature. A man. But not one who had come to rest. He thought he was finally safe for the night, but the night had other plans. The motel room was small, almost claustrophobic. A threadbare couch sat awkwardly against the wall, and a faded curtain barely shielded the window from the night outside. The young man dropped his bag with a thud, not bothering to unpack. He collapsed onto the couch, scrolling mindlessly through his phone, the weak light of the screen the only comfort against the creeping darkness. Hours must have passed, or maybe only minutes, when the first knock came. Loud. Sudden. It jolted him upright, heart hammering in his chest. He blinked at the old clock on the wall, 11 p.m. Confused, he shuffled to the door, half expecting to see another tired traveler or maybe the front desk clerk. But when he opened it, there was no one there. The hallway was empty, stretching away into darkness on both sides. No voices. No footsteps. Just the low hum of the flickering ceiling light overhead. Maybe he imagined it. Maybe the walls were thin and the knock wasn't even for him. But as he stood there, staring into the stillness, a chill slid down his spine. Maybe it was nothing, or maybe it was just the beginning. Sleep didn't come easily after that. Every creak of the old building seemed louder, sharper, scraping against his nerves. Still, exhaustion eventually won out, pulling him into a shallow, uneasy sleep. But it didn't last. Another bang jolted him awake, harder this time, rattling the door in its frame. Heart racing, he stumbled up and flung the door open again, almost angry now. Nothing. Just the same hollow hallway, stretching into blackness. The only sound was the distant hum of the lobby light. Enough was enough. Barefoot and tired, he walked the creaking hallway to the front desk, half ready to complain. The lobby was even darker than before. The woman at the desk blinked at him, startled, as if she'd forgotten anyone was even there. When he told her about the banging, her confused frown deepened. "You're the only guest tonight," she said softly, almost like she didn't want to hear herself say it out loud. A cold weight settled in his chest. No other rooms were rented. No other footsteps should exist. He locked every door, but real danger doesn't always knock. Back in the room, he double-checked every lock, every latch, every window. It felt absurd, almost childish, but the woman's words kept echoing in his mind. "You're the only guest tonight." The air inside the room was heavy, still. He lay on the bed, eyes fixed on the cracked ceiling, trying to slow his racing heart. Maybe some mindless videos could drown out the fear, at least long enough to sleep. He reached for his phone on the nightstand, the screen lighting up the room in a cold blue glow. That's when he saw it. In the farthest corner, standing perfectly still, a shape. Human. Watching. Silent. For a split second, his mind refused to process it. Maybe it was a coat, a shadow, a trick of the light. But then the figure shifted ever so slightly, and all denial shattered. The man wasn't just hiding. He had been there, the whole time. Waiting. Frozen with terror, he fumbled for the locks on the door, every second feeling like a lifetime as he heard the figure start to move, fast. When fear freezes you, running becomes the only choice. His fingers fumbled desperately at the locks, each click echoing like gunshots in the silent room. Behind him, footsteps thundered across the floor, fast, wild, closing the distance. At the last second, the door gave way, and he tore it open, throwing himself into the hallway. The front desk loomed ahead, a blurry beacon in the dim light. He sprinted, heart hammering against his ribs, socks slipping on the faded carpet. He caught a glimpse of the woman at the desk, her face frozen in shock, just as her eyes shifted, wide and terrified, to something behind him. Without looking back, he pushed harder, feeling the presence gaining ground. The lobby door slammed open, and he crashed through it into the cold night air. Behind him, the man burst into the lobby, but instead of chasing, he veered. He ran, straight into the darkness beyond the parking lot, swallowed by the night like a ghost fleeing the light. The woman called the police, but the man was gone, vanished without a trace. He left that night, never looking back. He escaped the hotel, but some things, once seen, are never truly left behind. Which of these 3 stories deserved a sequel? Subscribe to the channel and comment on which one you hope to see part 2 of. See you later, and don't look at that dark corner near you.